Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling, right? Staring at a task you really need to do, and suddenly you're reorganizing your sock drawer. Or scrolling through photos from 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That knot of guilt and frustration, it hits all of us. We tend to think of it as just, well, laziness or bad habits. But what if it's something much deeper? Something actually trying to tell you something important.
It's true, that universal experience of putting things off touches pretty much everyone. And the source material we have here, it really pushes us to look past that surface level judgment and understand what's truly going on underneath.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've got a stack of material focused on the Life Fuel 365 approach. These sources dig into the psychology behind procrastination, yes, but they also offer practical techniques, explore mindset shifts, and bring in a really compelling perspective on the link between time and energy.
Right. And the mission here is to go beyond just, identifying the problem. We want to distill from these sources what procrastination actually is, explore the deeper why behind it, and see how this Life Fuel 365 framework offers a path to transforming it.
Hmm.
It's framed less as conquering some kind of flaw and more as learning to listen, learning to hear the signals your mind and body are sending.
Yeah, this isn't about finding a magic bullet or just grinding harder, is it?
Yeah.
The sources make it clear it's about understanding yourself, finding that alignment between your time and your energy, and building a sustainable approach, not just to get things done, but really to fuel your life. So let's jump in. Let's start by peeling back the layers on what procrastination really is.
Okay. So at its core, the sources define procrastination as the voluntary delay of an intended action, despite knowing that this delay is likely to result in negative outcomes.
Okay, voluntary delay despite consequences.
Yeah. And what's key here is the emphasis on it being a form of self-regulation failure. Your immediate feelings, the discomfort, maybe boredom, the anxiety, a task brings up. Those short-term feelings win out over your long-term goals. It's often actually a way of coping.
A coping mechanism.
Wow.
That immediately changes the framing from "I'm just lazy" to something much more nuanced, doesn't it?
It really does.
And the sources really take aim at those common myths we've all heard, right?
Yeah.
The big one being that procrastinators are simply lazy people.
That myth is perhaps the most harmful because it focuses on a perceived character flaw rather than the underlying dynamics. The material consistently highlights that it's far less about innate laziness and much more about managing difficult emotions linked to the task itself.
Right.
Things like anxiety, fear, or just feeling completely overwhelmed. You're avoiding the feeling, not necessarily the work itself.
Okay, so if it's about managing feelings, what about that idea that some people, they work best under pressure, that waiting until the last minute actually boosts creativity?
Yeah, you hear that a lot. And while maybe a tiny percentage of tasks or individuals might genuinely benefit from pressure, the sources argue that for chronic procrastination, this is largely a rationalization. It typically leads to increased stress. The quality of the work suffers because you're rushed, and you often miss opportunities for deeper thinking or revision. That adrenaline might kick in, sure, but it's usually fueled by panic, not really peak creativity.
Not sustainable. And the idea that it's purely a time management issue, just get a better planner and you're fixed.
Well, time management tools are valuable, absolutely. We'll get into those. But the sources make a strong case that focusing only on scheduling misses the point entirely. Procrastination is deeply intertwined with emotional and psychological factors like fear of failure or perfectionism, maybe low self-worth around a particular task.
So you can schedule it perfectly.
Exactly. But if that underlying fear is there, we still just won't start.
Which brings us to the myth that you could just force yourself to stop. If it's rooted in emotion and psychology, forcing sounds counterproductive.
It really is. The sources suggest forcing often just increases internal resistance. It can lead to burnout or feeling even worse about yourself. Sustainable change, as they outline it, comes from understanding why you're delaying and then building supportive habits and mindsets rather than just trying to willpower your way through it.
Okay, so let's dig into that why. The psychology section talks about fear, perfectionism, and overwhelm as major triggers. How do those play out?
Well, fear is a huge one. It could be fear of failure. What if I try and it's just not good enough?
Right.
But also sometimes fear of success. What if I succeed and then even more is expected of me? Or just fear of judgment from others. If you subconsciously believe your value is tied to the outcome of a task, well, avoiding it removes the possibility of negative feedback, even if it means self-sabotage in the long run.
It's fascinating. Avoiding the task to protect your ego, in a way. What about perfectionism? How does striving for perfection lead to not doing anything?
It's a really common trap. When your standards are excessively high, The gap between where you are now and that flawless ideal feels insurmountable.
Yeah.
So starting the task, or even just contemplating it, brings up intense anxiety about not meeting those standards. Delaying becomes a way to avoid facing potential imperfection or criticism, whether that's internal criticism or from others. The task feels impossible before you even begin.
And overwhelm.
Yeah.
That one seems maybe more straightforward, just too much to do.
Right. When a task is large, or it's complex, or you simply don't know where to start, your brain can just sort of shut down. The sheer cognitive load feels too heavy. And procrastination is the brain's way of opting out of that immediate stress and anxiety. It's like a defense mechanism against feeling flooded.
So, bringing this all together, the sources really frame procrastination not as a character defect, but as information, a signal.
Exactly. It's less what's wrong with me and more what is this feeling, this resistance trying to tell me? It's information guiding you to an underlying issue, whether that's fear or a need for clarity, or maybe simply that you're trying to do something when your energy is completely mismatched for it. This perspective shift is really foundational in the Life Fuel 365 approach.
Which leads perfectly into recognizing your own specific patterns. If it's a signal, you need to learn your signal language, right?
Absolutely. Everyone's procrastination looks a little different. The sources stress that the first step is becoming a detective of your own habits. Ask yourself, what kinds of tasks do I always seem to put off? Is it writing, making phone calls, strategic planning?
Uh-huh.
Are there specific times of day it happens? Does it happen more with work projects or, say, personal goals? And importantly, what are the thoughts and feelings that surface just before you switch to doing something else?
Like maybe you notice you always clean the kitchen when you should be starting that big presentation, or you check email endlessly when you know you need to do deep focus work.
Precisely. The sources suggest simple tools, like keeping a procrastination log for maybe a week. Just jotting down what you avoided, what you did instead, and how you felt. Even that small act can reveal surprisingly clear patterns that were previously invisible.
And they make a distinction between emotional and situational triggers.
Yes, which is really helpful. Emotional triggers are those internal states. That wave of anxiety when thinking about calling a difficult client, the boredom you anticipate for a repetitive task, maybe self-doubt creeping in before you start writing, it's coming from inside you.
Okay.
So, for example, delaying writing a report because you doubt your writing skills, not because the task itself is inherently difficult or you don't have the info.
Okay, so what's happening in my head or my heart? And situational triggers then?
These are external things in your environment or the task setup itself.
Hmm.
A noisy office, constant Slack pings, maybe a cluttered desk that makes it hard to find what you need, or instructions for a project that are really vague and unclear. A classic example from the sources is avoiding a task simply because your workspace is a mess, or maybe your calendar's so packed you genuinely can't find a clear hour to focus.
That distinction is really helpful. Is the signal telling me something about my inner state or something about my environment or the task itself? The sources mention tools for this self-awareness.
Yeah. Building this self-awareness is really step one. They suggest things like regular emotional check-ins, just pausing briefly throughout the day to name what you're feeling. Mindfulness practice helps you observe these feelings without judgment. An environmental scan looking around your physical and digital workspace. And reflective journaling prompts like asking yourself, what about this specific task feels most daunting? Or what emotion comes up when I think about starting X? It's all about gathering data on yourself, really, without judgment.
This self-knowledge feels like the foundation, but then Life Fuel 365 introduces its really powerful core principle that mastering your energy is just as, if not more important than just managing your time.
This is the game changer, according to these sources. Traditional productivity advice often focuses solely on time schedules, deadlines, efficiency hacks. And those are important, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But they argue that time is just a container. Energy is the fuel you put into that container. You can schedule a task perfectly, but if your energy tank is empty, or maybe the wrong type of energy is low, that time block is pretty much useless. Managing energy means optimizing when and how you do tasks based on your actual capacity.
So Life Fuel 365 is about aligning time and energy, getting them both right.
Exactly. It's the balanced approach they push for unlocking potential and truly reducing the friction that leads to procrastination. It's about working smarter by understanding your internal resources.
And they break energy down into 3 distinct types, which I found really useful for thinking about this.
Yes, it helps you diagnose where you might be running low. First, there's physical energy, the basic capacity of your body, influenced by sleep, nutrition, hydration, movement, and rest. If you're physically drained, even mentally simple tasks feel difficult. Think feeling sluggish after a bad night's sleep, everything feels like a slog, right?
Yep, definitely been there.
Yeah.
What's the second type?
Mental energy. This is your ability to focus, concentrate, make decisions, solve problems. This gets depleted by things like constant context switching, complex problem solving, or just having too many open loops in your mind.
Okay.
The sources give the example of feeling mentally fried after, say, back-to-back meetings, making it incredibly hard to then focus on a task requiring deep thought.
I mean, my brain definitely feels like mush after a few hours of intense cognitive work, for sure. And the third?
Emotional energy. This is about your mood, your resilience, your emotional regulation. This gets drained by stress, conflict, frustration, negative self-talk, or even just suppressing difficult feelings. When your emotional energy is low, you're much more prone to seeking comfort or distraction, which
Oh.
leads straight back to those avoidance behaviors. Avoiding a tough conversation or a project you feel insecure about is often a sign of low emotional energy.
Okay, this connects right back to the signal idea. Procrastination isn't just random. It could actually be a symptom of low energy in one of these specific areas.
Precisely. The sources illustrate how these dips trigger avoidance. If physical energy is low, you might scroll social media instead of doing something active. If mental energy is depleted from decisions, you might tackle easy, mindless tasks instead of the complex one that needs focus.
Right.
If emotional energy is low due to stress, you might avoid starting a project that feels daunting because you lack the resilience right then to face potential challenges. The key shift is asking, which energy type is low right now?
That's powerful. It moves you from just, I'm not motivated, to, okay, my physical energy is low, maybe I need a quick walk, or my mental energy is shot, I should schedule that deep work for tomorrow morning when I'm fresh.
It provides a really actionable framework for self-compassion and problem solving, rather than just self-criticism.
And this leads us beautifully into the practical strategies the sources outline, techniques for both time and energy management, often working together.
Yeah, they offer a toolkit designed to work with your energy, not against it. For time management, they highlight classics like the 2-minute rule. You know this one.
Yeah, if it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it now.
Exactly. Do it immediately to prevent those small things from piling up and becoming mental clutter.
That's a great one for clearing the decks.
Time blocking is another big one, dedicating specific, protected chunks of time for focused work and trying to align these blocks with when you typically have higher energy for that type of task.
Smart.
And prioritization with purpose, using methods like the Eisenhower matrix, which helps you distinguish tasks based on urgency and importance, ensures you're applying your limited energy to what truly matters.
Setting clear deadlines, even for personal tasks, sounds like a good way to create some healthy pressure, maybe.
It definitely adds structure to those open-ended tasks that can otherwise just sit there indefinitely. And a key energy saver mentioned is limiting multitasking. Constantly switching between tasks drains mental energy far faster than single tasking,
Oh, I feel that.
which the sources strongly recommend, especially during those focused time blocks.
So those are some time techniques. What about the energy boosting habits, putting fuel back in the tank?
These are absolutely essential for maintaining vitality across all three energy types. Simple things, often overlooked, regular movement, even just short breaks for a walk or stretch, boosts physical and mental energy.
Mm-hmm.
Mindful breathing can quickly lower stress and help you regain emotional balance. Consistent hydration and nutrition provides steady physical fuel. And prioritizing sleep hygiene. Well, that's just non-negotiable for recharging all energy types.
Digital detox feels increasingly relevant these days.
Oh, absolutely. Setting firm boundaries on screens and notifications is crucial for protecting mental energy from constant distraction and also emotional energy from, comparison or FOMO.
True.
And positive self-talk builds that emotional resilience you need to push back against self-doubt when facing challenging tasks.
But even with all that energy and time managed, some tasks just feel huge. How do the sources suggest tackling that feeling of overwhelm?
This is where micro-actions and small wins come in. Probably the most effective technique mentioned is chunking tasks, breaking down a massive project into the absolute smallest, most manageable steps imaginable.
Like ridiculously small steps.
Yes. Instead of write report, it's maybe open document, write title, outline section 1, draft first paragraph, just tiny steps.
That makes it feel much more achievable.
Yeah.
Less scary.
And the 5-minute start is a direct attack on inertia. Just commit to working on that daunting task for only 5 minutes. The sources note that often just getting started is the hardest part,
Mm-hmm.
and once you're in motion, continuing feels much easier than you thought it would.
And you need to actually see the progress.
Right.
Track it.
Crucial for momentum and motivation. Visibly tracking progress, whether it's on a simple checklist or within a project management tool, gives you that tangible sense of moving forward. It reinforces the habit. And importantly, rewarding yourself, even for completing a small micro task, acknowledges the effort and makes the whole process feel more positive.
These small wins build consistency and momentum over time. That makes sense.
Exactly. So by combining these practical strategies, managing time effectively, boosting your energy, and breaking down those big, scary tasks, you start to create a robust system. A system aligned with the Life Fuel 365 principles to truly break free from being controlled by procrastination.
But as we've touched on, it's not just about the external actions, the tools and techniques, the internal shifts, the mindset. That's just as vital, isn't it?
This is arguably where the deepest transformation happens. Cultivating self-compassion and patience is absolutely paramount. Procrastination is often accompanied by intense guilt, shame, frustration, self-criticism.
Yet a negative self-talk.
Right, and that only feeds the avoidance cycle. It makes it worse.
So being kinder to yourself.
Yes. The sources emphasize that self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about recognizing that struggling with tasks is just part of being human. It's offering yourself the same understanding you'd offer a friend who is struggling. And patience is essential because changing these ingrained habits takes time and effort, and there will be setbacks. It's unavoidable. The focus should be on consistent effort and celebrating the progress you do make, not demanding perfection instantly.
And coming back to that core reframe, seeing procrastination as a signal, not a failure.
This is such a critical shift, moving away from judgment towards curiosity. Instead of thinking, oh, I failed again, it's asking, okay, what is this resistance trying to tell me? Is it about my fear, my energy level, the task itself? It turns procrastination into a source of valuable information for self-awareness and making smarter choices about how you approach your work and your life.
Because the path isn't linear, there will be stumbles, which is where resilience comes in.
Absolutely. The sources really normalize setbacks. They're learning opportunities, not failures. Building resilience is about your ability to bounce back from those stumbles.
How do you build that?
Well, maintaining clarity on your why, your purpose, your values helps fuel motivation through difficult patches. Creating supportive daily and win-through routines provides structure to help you regain momentum after you get off track.
And connecting with others for support. Is that part of resilience?
Definitely. Seeking community or accountability is incredibly powerful. Sharing your goals and challenges with an accountability partner, maybe a friend or colleague, or within a group like the Life Fuel 365 community mentioned in the sources. It provides external support, encouragement, and helps you stay committed even when your internal motivation might be wavering. And practicing gratitude, focusing on what is working, helps shift your perspective towards progress and positivity, which also fuels resilience.
So it's really a holistic approach combining practical skills, a compassionate mindset, and supportive habits. The sources also delve into optimizing your tools and environment, right?
Yeah, because your surroundings and the tools you use can either help or hinder you significantly. Tools should be allies, supporting your focus and well-being without adding more complexity or distraction. The Life Fuel 365 perspective really values simplicity and mindfulness in tool selection.
What kind of tools do they suggest looking at? Examples?
Well, task management apps like Todoist or TickTick are mentioned for helping chunk tasks and track progress. Time tracking apps like Clockify or just using your calendar effectively like Google Calendar help with time blocking and seeing where your time actually goes versus where you intended it to go.
And for supporting that energy and mindset piece we talked about.
Things like mindfulness apps, Headspace, or Calm for grounding yourself and emotional regulation. Even apps like Forest that sort of gamify putting your phone down to stay focused. And physical planners are also suggested for those who benefit from a tangible space to organize and reflect. The key thing is that the tool should enhance your system. It shouldn't become another source of overwhelm itself.
Right, another thing to manage. And optimizing your physical space.
Creating a distraction-free environment is fundamental. Decluttering your workspace removes visual noise. And critically, controlling digital distractions, turning off notifications, maybe using website blockers like Stay Focused or Freedom is pretty essential in today's world.
Setting boundaries must be key here, too.
Yeah.
Telling people you need focus time.
Absolutely. Clearly communicating to family or colleagues when you need uninterrupted focus time. Optimizing your physical comfort, good lighting, and ergonomic setup that also reduces friction. And for some people, ambient sound, like white noise or instrumental music, can help create a focused bubble.
And accountability again. How do tools fit in there?
Gentle reminders are useful, sure, using apps or your calendar, but the sources warn against becoming dependent on constant alerts. The real power is often in human connection. Accountability partners, whether a friend, colleague, or coach, provide that external check-in that can make a huge difference. Accountability groups offer a shared journal, a place to celebrate wins and navigate challenges together. And technology like Zoom or messaging apps just makes these connections easy to maintain, even remotely.
So combining these elements, the right tools, an optimized environment, and supportive accountability creates this powerful ecosystem that supports your energy, your focus, and your growth.
Yeah, it's all part of building that supportive Life Fuel 365 system around yourself.
Which brings us to the overarching idea, the kind of culmination of this deep dive, becoming a Life Fuel 365 producer. What does that mean?
This is really the synthesis of everything we've talked about. It means understanding that procrastination doesn't define you. It's a signal, it's a teacher. It's an opportunity for deep personal growth. The philosophy isn't about rigid schedules and constant pressure, but about finding your rhythm.
Yep.
It's about focusing on progress, not paralyzing pressure. It's about aligning your actions with your purpose, not just chasing external performance metrics. True productivity, in this framework, is about doing what truly matters, doing it with clarity, with care, and with sustained energy.
It sounds like a continuous journey, not really a destination you arrive at.
It absolutely is. The sources emphasize that becoming a producer of your life requires practice, patience, persistence, and fundamentally a belief in yourself. Believing that you are capable of change, that your goals are achievable, and that your life is worthy of your focused time and energy.
So you celebrate the small wins, you take the needed breaks, you reflect on what's working and what's not, you realign your approach when necessary, and you're always ready to restart.
Exactly. Every day offers a fresh chance to create, to grow, and to fuel your life from the inside out. You're not just passively reacting to tasks or deadlines anymore.
You are actively creating momentum, reclaiming your power.
You are the producer of your own journey. That's the core idea.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've seen that procrastination is, well, it's complicated. It's a complex signal, often linked to energy dips, physical, mental, or emotional, and those deeper psychological triggers like fear and perfectionism. Overcoming it sustainably isn't about brute force.
Definitely not.
It's about understanding your unique patterns, balancing time and energy management, using smart practical techniques like breaking tasks down into tiny steps, and really cultivating a resilient, compassionate mindset. The Life Fuel 365 approach offers this holistic framework for the entire transformation, moving you from passive reactor to active producer.
It's about building a system that supports your well-being while helping you consistently do what matters most to you.
So, coming away from this deep dive today, maybe take a moment to reflect.
Yeah.
What is one specific signal your procrastination might be sending you right now? Is it pointing to low emotional energy, maybe a need for more clarity on a task, or perhaps just pick one tiny practical technique from the sources? It's like identifying the single next micro action on a daunting task, or simply trying the 5-minute start. And just give it a try today. See what happens.
And remember those powerful reminders from this material to carry forward with you.
Stay curious.
Stay resilient.
Keep the spark alive.
Dive deep.
You are the producer of your life journey.